So I want to thank Sandra and Joe because they pretty much said my whole message for me. So now we don't have to hear the whole thing. It's going to be really short. We're going to talk today about forgiveness, a gift to ourselves. So a man buys a parrot and brings it home, and the parrot starts cussing at him, really nasty. And the man gets angry and he throws the parrot in the freezer to teach him a lesson. And the parrot's squawking like crazy for a couple of minutes, and then all of a sudden, dead silence. So the man decides to see what's going on, so he opens the freezer, and the parrot walks out, and he's like, "I'm very sorry for what I did. Please forgive me." The man says, "I forgive you. No problem." The parrot says, "By the way, what did the chicken do?" So today we're going to talk about what forgiveness is. First, what forgiveness is not. Then we're going to talk about what forgiveness is, what it does. And we're going to talk about forgiving ourselves, which is our greatest gift. So forgiveness is not. A lot of people believe that forgiveness is to condone the harmful things that the people did. So a lot of times we hold on to that anger because they wronged us. And sure, people do wrong other people all the time. So we think that if we forgive them, that we're letting them off the hook. Or we think we're giving them a license to do the same things again. And sometimes we think we don't forgive because we lack, or we want to. Let me start again. We want to not forgive because we think people deserve the condemnation. I remember one time I was talking to my mom about something my sister had done to me, and I'm like, "She's always stepping on my toes." My mom said, "Well, sometimes people need their toes stepped on." And I think sometimes we do. If somebody's getting in your face, maybe they need their toes stepped on to back them up just a little bit. So forgiveness is not forgetting. So we've all heard the phrase, forgive and forget, but we also know that we don't forget. And we've heard the phrase that time heals all wounds, and it doesn't necessarily do that. We still hurt. So trying to forget is kind of like pushing a ball down in a pool. It's going to come up and hit you right in the face. So we don't want to necessarily forget. We want to deal with the anger and the bitterness. Forgiveness is not silent. So I was saying time heals all wounds, and that sounds all good, but forgiveness isn't waiting patiently to stop hurting. And it isn't waiting for the other person to say, "I'm sorry." Sometimes they're not going to say they're sorry. Forgiveness is not kissing and making up. So we've all had a conflict with someone, and then all of a sudden, the other person starts acting like nothing happened. So we might feel like all was forgiven, but not necessarily. Forgiveness isn't waiting to stop hurting. It's not sweeping the problem under the carpet and acting like everything is fine. It's not ignoring the problem. We forgive them. Maybe they were in the wrong church. Who knows? Forgiveness isn't just saying the words, "I forgive you." Most of us learn this idea from our parents that if our siblings did something wrong to us, we're forced to say, "I'm sorry" to them, and we don't necessarily feel it. And, when someone is forced to say they're sorry to you, you can tell whether they mean it or not. So even though they don't mean it, we can still forgive. So forgiveness is not saying what happened was okay. Some people refuse to give because, like I said, what happened to them was wrong. So forgiving isn't saying it wasn't wrong, but we still want to forgive in order to heal and move forward. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. So restoring the relationship is nice, but it's not always possible. We don't want to put ourselves back in a dangerous situation. So it's not, you don't want to say, "Okay, I forgive you," and then go back and let them do the same thing to you again. What forgiveness is. So there's an excellent book called The Forgiving Self written by Robert Cairns. So a lot of this next section is from that book. It's quite a long book. I plan on doing a book study on that early this next year. So if you guys want to join us for that, it's a little deeper dive into this. So, and what I'm going to share from that book is just from the introduction. So it's a lot of good stuff. But what forgiveness is letting someone back into your heart through understanding. We understand them, and so that we can let them back in. So forgiveness. Forgiveness is an aspect of the workings of love. It can be a bridge back from hatred and alienation, as well as a liberation from the two kinds of hell: bitterness and victimhood on one side, guilt, shame, and self-recrimination on the other. So you notice it's a two-sided coin. There's the victim, and there's the person who committed the crime. So another thing Robert Cairns says, a successful marriage, and I would say any successful relationship, means an inevitable round of disappointment, anger, withdrawal, and repair. People hurt each other no matter how much love they share. I think I've found that's true. There are people that I love, and they don't mean to hurt. They don't mean to do things that hurt us, but sometimes they do, just, inadvertently. And I think that's normal. No friendship, no marriage, no family connections of any kind would last if the silent reparative force of forgiveness were not working almost constantly to counteract the corrosive effects of resentment and bitterness. So we all know how with that resentment and bitterness just kind of eats at us and corrodes the wellness of our being. All right, that's the next one. So I was talking about how there are two sides of the coin: the victim and the criminal, quote unquote. So the victim's part is complicity. They're allowing it to happen. So I'm reminded of a story. I was in a teen group, and one of the kids was talking about how his brother's always picking on him and how horrible it is. And the minister just kind of looked at him and said, "It must be really hard playing the victim all the time." And he didn't understand what she was saying, but I did. That he's playing a role that he chose to play, and that is the victim. I know I'm the youngest of 6, so I feel like I was the victim of a lot of abuse from my older brothers and sisters. And not realizing that I was allowing them to do that. I was playing my part as the victim. So this is from the Mayo Clinic. Okay, I think I messed up our slides. I think I put the slides in the wrong order. Yeah, I think I have the slides in the wrong order. All right, well, I'm just going to go with what I have here. Forgiveness means different things to different people. In general, it involves an intention to let go of anger and resentment. So we know we have to have the intention to do it. The act that hurt or offended might always be with you, but when we're working on forgiveness, we can learn to let go of that, and we can lessen the grip that act has on you. So there are benefits to forgiving. Here are some of the benefits. Healthier relationships. That's pretty easy to understand. If we're able to forgive, then we'll have healthier relationships, because, like I said, people always do things that inadvertently hurt us. Improved mental health. So that also seems pretty obvious. If we're able to forgive, we're not thinking constantly about the anger and the hurt. Forgiving leads to less anxiety, stress, and hostility. It's another obvious one. If we're forgiving, we're not dwelling on that. And dwelling on these things causes stress. Fewer symptoms of depression. I know I was a depressive for a long time, and that's what I would do, is I would just think about all the things that didn't work out, that didn't happen right. Not necessarily the things that people did, but just life in general. Maybe I was mad at God. So forgiveness helps with that. It lowers your blood pressure. That's a good one. Anyone here have high blood pressure? I don't. I have low blood pressure. But you'd think I'd have high blood pressure, because sometimes I can get pretty... I can hold on to stuff for a long time. Forgiveness leads to a stronger immune system. That's interesting. I don't understand how that works, but I think that's really cool that it helps our immune system, helps us to fight off sickness, improves heart health, improves self-esteem. So we're going to talk more about that later. And so what are the effects of holding a grudge? So if you struggle with forgiveness, you might bring anger and bitterness into new relationships and experiences. I remember talking to a minister, Reverend Kim O'Connor, about how I wanted a new job. I just did not like this job, and I needed to get a new job. And she said, well, if you go into that new job with that experience, with that mindset, you're just going to bring that along with you to your new job. So the good thing is, the thing you want to do is get over that mindset about how I hate this job. I had a friend at work. We worked for the post office for 14 years, and I don't know if you know anything about working at the post office, but it's kind of like the military. The bosses told you what to do, did not care what you had to say about anything. Just do what you're told and be happy. That was the rule. And so my friend went to his therapist, and she told him to tell himself every day, I love my job. So at lunch, he would be sitting there, love job, love job, love job. And he didn't sound like he meant it. But I've used that myself and just remind myself just to be thankful for the job that I have and to love it. Because there are going to be good things about every job, especially that paycheck. With the post office, good benefits, really good benefits. So it was really, there were some good points about it, even though working there every day was, as my friend described it, a soul-sucking, mind-numbing experience. And that can be true for any job or anything, any relationship. And so we want to focus on the good. So holding a grudge makes us become so wrapped up in the wrong that we can't enjoy the present. So if we're constantly dwelling on the past, we're certainly not enjoying the present. We can become depressed and irritable. We talked about that before. You'll feel at odds with your spiritual beliefs. I know there are a lot of spiritual beliefs that teach forgiveness, and sometimes they just teach, blanket forgiveness, and I don't think that's good. And Robert Karen doesn't think that's good. Sometimes you don't need to forgive. You shouldn't forgive. But being told all the time that you have to forgive, it can be like our parents telling us to say you're sorry. If we don't mean it, it doesn't really do much good. So holding a grudge will cause us to lose valuable and enriching connections with others. I know I've lost friendships because people were mad at me about things that they couldn't hold back, that they couldn't let go of. And I've lost friends that I'm so mad at that I didn't want to be their friend anymore. And sometimes that's okay. Like if they're abusing you, like I have some family members who are still doing things that I don't like, and so I let them go. I have to let them go. So how do we move toward a state of forgiveness? So forgiveness is a commitment to change. It takes practice. So to move forward toward forgiveness, we might recognize the value, how it can improve your life. So we talked about the benefits of forgiveness. So recognizing those gives us an incentive to want to forgive. Identified what needs healing and who you want to forgive. That's usually pretty easy, identifying who you want to forgive, but not necessarily what needs healing in our life. So Robert Karen talks about a couple that the man cheated on the woman, and so the woman withholds affection from him. She says, I forgive you, but she makes him take an AIDS test every 6 months, and he feels like he's in prison. And what it ended up coming down to was the abandonment she felt from her father. So instead of being mad at her father, she holds it against her husband. Something that will help us in forgiving is joining a support group or seeing a counselor. I know that the many counselors I've had over the years have really helped me to forgive people, to understand people, to realize that they're not the only ones who've done anything wrong. I've done things wrong too. And so if I can understand that I can do things wrong, I can understand that other people do too. That's one of the keys, is understanding. So acknowledge emotions about the harm and recognize how they affect your behavior and work to release them. Those all seem very obvious. So let's practice. Let's take a second, close our eyes, take a deep breath, and another nice deep centering breath. And let's think about somebody that we're mad at, that did something to us that we didn't like. And let's just feel the feelings. Let's just register how that makes us feel when they did the thing they did. Now let's try to understand that they did the best they could. Maybe they didn't do it on purpose. Maybe they did. But even if they did do it on purpose, that was probably the best they could do. They thought it was right. Let's try to think of something that we did that other people got mad at, but we thought it was the right thing to do at that time. And then let's just release that other person. Let's understand that they did the best they could do, and that they're human just like us. And as much as we can, let's just release the hurt. Okay. Does anybody feel a little better about that, or are we still working on that? Yeah, it can be a process. It's not always an easy thing to do. It's not something that can necessarily be done quickly. So let's keep those thoughts in our hearts as we go forward. All right. And so as Sandra talked about, forgiving ourselves, the Daily Word also talked about that too. I thought that was very interesting. I thought this was a revolutionary idea that old Dennis had, to forgive ourselves. So many of us, are there any of us that think we're perfect? Any of us? Okay, no one has that problem here. Good. That's okay. There we go. I'm off. I'm off again. No, that's the right one. Okay, so I wanted to talk about all the mistakes that Dennis makes. And Dennis makes lots of mistakes. It took me many years to get over the fact I had a perfectionist mother. So to me, in my mind, if I make a mistake, I'm not worthy of love anymore. And it really bothered me for many, many years. One day, I think I've told this story before, but I was going out shopping, and as I was driving down the street, I realized I hadn't checked my bank account to see how much cash I had to spend. I do need to spend it all. So I had to check how much I had, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to check here in the car because I don't want all my information, going over the airwaves. And so I was kind of mad at myself, but I turned the car around and I went back home, and I realized I had left the door unlocked. So it was like one mistake led to fixing a different mistake. So that kind of helped me learn to just laugh about that. I laughed pretty good about that. But recently, one of the mistakes I keep making is I drop things all the time. So I don't know if my grips, I have had carpal tunnel surgery, but my grip doesn't seem to be as good. So I'm dropping things, breaking them all the time. A couple of months ago, I came in from the front door from changing my hummingbird feeder, and I dropped the hummingbird feeder right on the carpet inside the front door. So all that hummingbird juice is all over our carpet. Then about 5 minutes later, I'm changing another one in the back, and I drop it right in front of the back door on the concrete. And I was pretty mad. I wasn't saying good things about myself or to myself. And then a couple weeks later, I did the same thing. I dropped the hummingbird feeder in front of, or right inside the front door. I was like, what the heck is going on? So I was telling my mentor about it, and she said, Dennis, maybe that's something you need to put in your self-awareness, that you drop things, and then you can be more careful, pay more attention to what's in your hands. And she said, what I do when I make a mistake like that is I just tell myself, I love you, Judy. So she said, just try that when you make mistakes. Just say, I love you, Dennis. And so I've been working on that, and it really has helped. I went from cussing to cussing just a little bit. and then saying, I love you, Dennis. And it really has changed. And now at this point, I just go right to I love you, Dennis. I will give a good sigh. I broke something here the other night, Christmas Eve, and I just gave a good sigh and went, well, it's just a thing. That reminds me, my daughter was telling me. So my daughter's going to be 40 next year. And she's living with her boss, kind of a weird situation, but it's working out well because the lady was a foster parent, and so she has a lot of good tools that are helping my daughter. And so she was just talking about how when you spill something, she was just like, oh, it's just a spill. Whereas I was taught when you spill something, you get up, you get something right now. Oh my God, you spilled something, and clean that up right now. And it was a big deal for me growing up. So that's what I learned. Or if you break something, oh my God, I can't believe you broke that. And that's what I taught my children, that it's a horrible thing. You broke something and you need to be punished, or at least yelled at, right? So my daughter's boss says, no, it's just a thing. It's not that big of a deal. And it just reminded me that we're taught certain behaviors. And so I'm teaching myself, it's just a thing. It's just a thing. It's going to be okay. So, some of the benefits, this is from Chanel Family Therapy, some of the benefits of self-forgiveness. Increased self-esteem. So we talked about that. So how does forgiveness help our self-esteem? So self-blame and guilt, what they do is they erode our self-confidence. And forgiveness helps rebuild us and to strengthen us when we forgive ourselves. It builds our self-esteem by focusing on our positive qualities. And also learning from our experiences. So I can learn that I have to have a better grip on these things so I don't drop them. Forgiving ourselves helps us to break free from the past. So we're talking about the past, how we were raised, and how we learn to beat ourselves up about things. So self-forgiveness helps us to let go of those things. And it helps us to focus on the present moment and the future instead of what happened before. Improved mental health, we talked about that. So the burden of self-blame and unforgiveness, it contributes to anxiety, depression, and other mental issues. When we forgive ourselves, we experience a sense of peace, a sense of relief, and understanding. It promotes overall mental well-being. Self-acceptance. By forgiving ourselves, we acknowledge our imperfections, and mistakes are part of being human. That's just the way it is. We're all human. We all make mistakes. I found that I used to think that the older I got, the fewer mistakes I would make, and it's kind of working the opposite. MGM knows about that. I've thought I don't even remember, but my daughter and I, when she was in school, had an argument about whether Saturn was the 5th planet or the 6th planet. I think it's the 5th. My very excited mother, it's the 6th, I guess. Just served us 9 pizzas. But I was convinced it was the 5th. And I'm like, okay, well, how did that switch from when I was 10 and learned which planet Saturn was? So I think it's the older I get, the more mistakes I make because the more I forget. Ooh, so yeah, just a natural part of life. Learning and growth. So forgiving ourselves means we recognize our mistakes and use them as learning opportunities. Like I said, it allows us to grow and develop as a human by gaining insight and making better choices. And then also taking responsibility for our actions. It helps us to do that. Forgiveness brings empowerment. Self-forgiveness brings empowerment. When we forgive ourselves, we take control of our own narrative. We define our own self-worth. And it allows us to break free from being defined by the past mistakes and gives us positive energy. Overall well-being, we've talked about this before. Self-forgiveness contributes to overall well-being by nurturing positive and compassionate relationship with ourselves and helps us have more inner peace and happiness and gives us a more fulfilling life. And then healthy relationships, we talked about that. Self-forgiveness positively impacts our relationships with others because we're not constantly being defensive and constantly being sensitive about everything. It cultivates empathy, compassion, and forgiveness towards others when we can forgive ourselves. And as we become less judgmental we become more understanding of human fallibility. So let's practice again. Let's close our eyes. Take a nice deep breath. And another nice deep centering breath. Let's hold it at the top for a second. And then release it. Now let's think of something that we're mad at ourselves about, something that we think we should do or something that we think we shouldn't have done. Let's just feel the feelings about that. Now let's just allow ourselves to understand that we are human and we make mistakes. Let's know that all things are learning opportunities. Let's understand that we are doing the best we can. Now let's just let go of the anger that we have towards ourselves. Just release it like a balloon, a helium balloon, letting it float up into the sky. We are worthy of love, even in our mistakes. Let's just take that into our hearts. No matter what we do or didn't do, we are worthy of love. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Come back into the room. Beautiful. Does anybody feel a little better about themselves? I know I do. 3 people, yay! That's better than none. 4, 5, 6. Do I have 7? Oh, 8. Wow, okay. So we talked about today forgiveness, what forgiveness is not, what forgiveness is, what unforgiveness does. We talked about forgiving ourselves being our greatest gift to ourselves. So a minister gave a message on forgiveness, and at the end she asked the people to come forward who wanted to forgive their enemies. And he noticed that his oldest congregant was still sitting out in the audience. And he was kind of curious. She was kind of curious, and she was like, Edna, don't you have anyone you need to forgive? Edna says no. She's like, come on, it's hard for me to believe that someone who has lived as long as you have doesn't have any enemies that they need to forgive. And she said, no enemies. She was like, I'm curious, how is it that you have no enemies? And Edna says, I've outlived them all. So let's not outlive our enemies. Let's forgive them to the best of our ability. Thank you. Aw. All right, so we've got a song for you.
I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am stronger every moment, every day. My mind is willing and my heart is open wide. I trust my instincts and let spirit be my guide. I vow to live a life that's real and pure and free, as I continue walking in this mystery. I will surrender to my greatest, highest is good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am grateful every moment, every day. There may be walls, there may be roadblocks in my way, but I can choose to take a higher path each day. And now I know that what I thought was safe and sound was only habit and regret that held me down. I will surrender to my greatest, highest good. I will release any fear that blocks my way. For every step I take is taken in pure faith, and I am kinder every moment, every day, and I'm more loving every moment, every day. I will surrender every moment, every day.
All right, let's say this together. I am a beloved child of God, here to be an ambassador of good. All right, now it's time to give. If we could have someone take the collection. So Unity of Tempe is supported by gifts and by tithes. We wouldn't be here if people didn't give, so we thank you very much for giving. And there's an opportunity to make your last in-person gift today for this year. So, do we have a song for this, Joe? All right, let's say this together. I am a joyful share of my good. I remember that as I give, I receive, and that God is my source. So let's pray over these gifts. Oh, we are so thankful for the gifts that people give that help sustain us, that carry us along so that we're here to be a light for people every week. We're thankful for the love in the hearts that comes forth and is manifested in the gifts. Thank you, thank you. And we lift up every prayer in the prayer box, and we see them as being met, being fulfilled. We're so thankful that we live in a loving universe that is on our side. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is. Thank you. All right, so here's the QR code for giving. So it'll take you to the website, or you can give on Zelle. It's under unityoftempe@gmail.com. You would look for that. So thank you to everyone who's brought food. We don't have any food today, but we have a lot of people that bring food, so thank you very much for that. The next collection will be January 26th or any time, like it says. You can always bring food, and we'll keep it and then turn it in on January 26th. If you have food insecurity, you can contact MatthewsCrossing.org at this number, UnitedFoodBank.org. I know there's one in Mesa. Senior food boxes. Or if you need more information, you can see Kent. Reverend Kent is a great liaison for this. Thank you, Kent. All right. So next week we start a short series with Reverend Dr. Mitzi Linton. Release, Reflect, and Renew. help us to get clarity on our purpose and intentions for 2025. Next week, bring a notepad or a journal and a pencil so that we can deal with some of the things like solidify our goals and things for next year. All right. You are loved. That's always good to know, isn't it? That we're loved. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we have a song. Do I hit the button? All right, sing along if you know it. The light of God surrounds me. I am the light. The love of God enfolds me. I am the love. The power of God protects me. I am the power. The presence of God watches over me. I am the presence wherever I am. God is, and now us. The light of God surrounds us. We are the light. The love of God enfolds us. We are the love. The power of God protects us. We are the power. The presence of God watches over us. We are the presence wherever we are. God is, and all is well. Thank you. Thank you for joining us online. We hope you can come to see us soon.